Chapter 1401. Conversations with Mages. The Tower, located in the Golden City in the 4th stratum, is a house of learning and knowledge second to none in all of Pangara. Here it is that the most respected and prodigious minds debate and study all aspects of life on Pangara. Classes, monsters, mana, the dungeon, diplomacy, governance, gardening, pot-making and the appropriate decorations for end tables. There is no question the scholars of the Tower will not pursue to the ends of the world. With a reputation for truly ferocious discussions, the Tower is not a place for the faint-hearted. If one is not prepared to defend their position with logic, reams of evidence, masterful rhetoric and a robust, red-faced screaming session, then they will have a short career indeed. Excerpt from Living in the Tower, by Rathwin Werelos. Rathwin is essentially what someone would think about when picturing a mage. He has a long, grayish beard, aggressive eyebrows and piercing eyes. The image is slightly thrown off by the shorts and short-sleeved shirt he's wearing, however. Did this guy really come to the 5th for a holiday? Question mark. Is there anything more insane than that? A mind bridge stretches out to me, and again, I can't help but notice the quality of its construction. The weave is tight as a drum, near flawless. It snaps into place so smoothly it's an almost totally different experience. This guy is damn good with his mind magic. Anthony, nice to see you well. Things were a little grim the last time we spoke. He's smiling, but his tone is sincere. I can't figure this guy out, just what the heck is going on here? Let's not mention that unfortunate incident, I say, waving an antenna in greeting. Tension is still high in the colony as a result of what happened that day. And there will be a price to pay. Oh yes, I haven't forgotten, the Church of the Path is on my list, and the Silver City won't come out unscathed. That's sensible, Rathwin nods, stroking his beard with one hand while he holds his luggage with the other. With peaceful relations prospering between the city and the colony, there is no reason to dwell on the unpleasantness. Rathwin, you and your fellows look like you're here on vacation. What in the name of heck are you doing in the 5th wearing shorts? His legs are as hairy as his face, for the record. Perhaps it wouldn't be so bad, but all of the mages are dressed the same way. I swear one of them has palm trees, or something very much like them, printed all over his brightly colored shirt. How is that even a thing? Rathwin's eyes twinkle and he smiles broadly at my question. That's because we are on holiday. Technically speaking, what you see before you, he makes a broad, sweeping gesture to include the smiling, bearded and shorts-wearing group behind him, is the Interspecies Relations Department of the Tower. We have, each and every one of us, decided to take a vacation to come and visit the colony and witness for ourselves what you are going to achieve here. They all seem very pleased with themselves, but to me, they all look insane. This is the 5th, and a wave is about to break. Don't you think this is a bit dangerous? I ask incredulously. Of course it is, Rathwin states reasonably, but this an unprecedented academic opportunity. If the colony succeeds even a little bit, there will be libraries filled with studies and texts written about your efforts. To excel in academia, sometimes it's necessary to take a little risk in order to be on the front lines, so to speak. And this has nothing to do with spying on the capabilities of the colony. Rathwin's broad smile doesn't even twitch. Don't be absurd, of course it does. Yet you'd rather have someone like me here as a spy for the child emperor than someone from the Church of the Path, don't you think? As if we'd let them in. I chomp my mandibles at the thought, even though I realize it isn't that simple. If the child emperor sent one to us as a representative, could we really turn them around and tell them to buzz off? Trade and friendly relations with places like the Silver City are supposed to protect us from those who would seek to harm us, like the Abyssal Legion. Would it be worth ruining that to keep out a single priest? Maybe. So yes, I will be doing some poking and prying on behalf of my emperor and the Tower, but for the most part, I'm here to study, learn, and hopefully, witness history, Rathwin says. I have to say, judging by what I've seen so far, I think we've made a good bet. This fortress is remarkable. The staging ground above is like nothing I've ever seen before. You haven't seen anything yet, I tell him, sighing to myself. Well, they're here now. May as well help them settle in. Things are going to get mighty hectic from this point onward. 1402. This is remarkable, Rathwin tells me, then turns to say something to the goggle-eyed gaggle of mages behind him. They all nod enthusiastically, each jabbering as quickly as the next. Why don't you just hook all of them into the mind bridge? I ask him, a little exasperated. I've been watching him pass on my words for an hour now, and the lack of efficiency is starting to bug me. You know I'm safe, as far as giant ants go. The group is standing inside one of the mighty gates that separates the inside of the fortress from the platforms and intakes outside. They were extremely keen to learn how the safe zone was created and maintained, and there didn't seem to be a problem showing them. Just to be safe, I checked with Solent, and she didn't seem to care, so here we are. They were fascinated, and somewhat charmed, by the woofers, happily woofing away on their platforms, chewing through prodigious amounts of toxic mana without breaking a sweat. Only half of the woofer platforms in the fortress are active right now, so there's still a long way to go before this place is running at full capacity, but from what I've heard, the core shapers are really cranking them out, so it shouldn't be long. You're right, Rathwin chuckles. I should connect them up. It would make my life easier, if nothing else. Give me a moment. He goes silent for a brief period, and I'm given another opportunity to witness his masterful control of mind magic. There, that should have all of us connected. Introduce yourselves, please. I'm Anthony, I say, giving a wave. Nice to meet you. Engelbert, Horatio, Lady Mauritius, Camsworth, Kathy. These names are all so. Wait a second, Kathy. I stare hard at the woman in question without letting her know I'm staring. Easy to do with eyes like mine. She seems a lot more robust than the others, putting it mildly. I think I might have spotted the bodyguard they snuck in. The rest of them are as bookish as Rathwin himself. Certainly more believable that they're mage scholars. Well, welcome to the fortress. I hope we don't all die in the next few months. Anyone have any questions? How is the fortress defended, militarily? Kathy asks, folding her arms across her chest, inadvertently showing off the guns. Sheesh, lady. Don't make it obvious. Still, there's no reason to hide it from them. Why don't we go take a look, then? I say, just to check, we're all comfortable getting a bit closer to the action. Beyond this gate is an active war zone, after all. There aren't any windows. One of them, Camsworth, asks. Nope, if you want to see it, you've got to head out the gate. I'm sure it'll be fine, Rathwin states encouragingly. Let's go. I give a nod to the gate guards, and they activate the mechanism, which opens the massive thing, letting it swing wide enough for me to squeeze through. As promised, beyond the gate is a scene straight out of a nightmare. There's a bridge, blazing with light as massive amounts of mana are channeled through it, beyond which stands the platform itself. Tens of thousands of ants and militia hold the line, defending the intakes and holding back the nightmare creatures of the fifth. The rage-filled screeches of the monsters are near deafening, even from here. Explosions, fire, acid and slime fly every which way. There's a steady stream of figures moving to and fro between the field hospital set in the center of the platform. Burned individuals and those contaminated by toxic mana are rushed in to be cleansed before they get sent back out to do it all over again. Each of the academics has a sickly look on their face as they witness the full horror of the fifth, and even Kathy looks impressed. 8 of these with over 40,000 ants on each of them, I tell the group. This is where the mana intakes are located, so without them, the entire fortress would quickly be overrun by the native mana. And you're going to defend these platforms throughout the entire duration of the wave? Rathwin asks shrewdly. How do you intend to achieve that? With difficulty, I say grimly. The fifth has been getting more and more toxic as the concentration of mana rises. There are a lot of plans afoot, but right now, we have to hold with what we have. Solent has all sorts of schemes in mind, but they aren't quite ready to implement. I'm about to turn around and usher the mages back inside the fortress when I first sense the oncoming power. It's like a pulse, originating somewhere deep down, perhaps right in the center of the planet, and it rolls outwards at tremendous speed. I feel it far below me, right at the edges of my mana sense, but before I can even say anything, it's already on top of me. The mana around me compresses as that enormous force washes through and races onwards, up and up, all the way to the surface of Pangara. The change is immediate. The color of the toxic mana deepens, grows more dense and vibrant, and begins to press in on the safe zone. The monsters throwing themselves against the colony's defenses are thrown into an even greater state of frenzy, their cores overflowing with power. The wave has finally arrived. The fortress was finished literally a day before it struck. If you'll excuse me, I'll have to leave you here, I tell the mages. I suggest you get back inside. Quickly. Even Rathwin looks a little pale-faced. Yes, of course, he says. He goes to say something else, but I'm already turning away, snapping off the contact. Good thing I brought them to my platform. Before I even reach the front lines, I have 2 gravity bombs in the works, crunching the mana down and summoning the power of the altar. This is going to be awful. Chapter 1403. Corruption Wakes. Deep in the dungeon, where the mana boiled and billowed, so thick the pressure of it could crush a man to death, a creature stirred from its deep sleep. Tremors echoed out from the entity as its consciousness began to return. Flashes of sensation penetrated the dreams that still held its mind, great heat and slight discomfort after centuries without moving. In small increments, wakefulness returned, sleep relinquishing its grip. It was a difficult thing, to awaken from such depths, and the creature idly wondered, as it lazed in a state of half awake, half asleep, just how long the process had already taken. Months perhaps. Years, maybe. It didn't matter. This process had repeated itself many times over already, and would repeat many times more, unless the 20th was found and the prison was finally broken. Mana surged out from the core, an unfathomable torrent of power, and the creature sucked it in greedily. As the energy poured through its limbs, the creature rose steadily to consciousness, finally bursting through and opening its eyes. Therazin was awake. The decaying world stirred alongside its master. A thick soup of toxin, poison, acid and decay, even mana itself was not immune from its corruption, the energy breaking apart, rotting, then reforming into something new. In this place, all things were remade in Therazan's image. One by one, the ancient stirred each of its limbs. Thick and powerful, each of the 5 arms flexed, drinking in the foulness that drenched them and using it to strengthen themselves. From beneath its massive body, 10 legs unfolded and tested the ground, pushing Therazin up as its eyes extended atop long stalks. At once, a dominating aura swept through the decaying world, sending the denizens of that place fleeing into their dens, using their cunning and skills to conceal themselves. These were the most toxic and poisonous monsters in the entire dungeon, yet they knew what to do when the ancient was awake: hide. For those who were caught by Therazin, only the most dreadful of fates awaited. Slowly at first, but with increasing speed, the ancient extended its senses throughout its domain, trying to grasp what had changed over the passage of time. Hunger was there, deep within, a yawning void that would need to be filled, but that could wait, for the moment. First, the ancient would listen, and learn. It didn't take long until Therazin felt another consciousness reach out to its own, a tenuous connection that limited contact between the two vast minds. "You have awoken, Therazin." Deep and bestial, the voice rattled like the dying sigh of an aged wolf. "Odrin, how unusual for you to take a break from hunting." Therazin skittered from side to side, feeling strength and power return with every passing second. The father of monsters growled, a flash of savage teeth snapping across their connection. "The hunt has gone well. This cycle shows great promise." For the first time in centuries, Therazin felt a trickle of interest. For Odrin to say this much, the old monster must have caught something with real potential. Perhaps there was a chance for them after all. A way out of this cage. "Who else is awake?" Therazin asked. "Many. Taraflix awoke recently. Arcanidum and Caraflare before that. Larawin is awake, along with Braxon and Kygar." A pause. "Moribolg is stirring also," Odrin mused. Therazin hissed, an explosion of toxin dissolving everything around the ancient for a moment, creating a void occupied only by itself. So, the old heap of filth was soon to wake. "Good," Therazin stated, concealing any anger, "I have not spoken with Moribolg in some time." "I wonder why," Odrin wondered, but Therazin could practically feel the fellow ancient's savage grin. "Many are stirring now," Odrin continued, "it won't be long until we are all awake. Then we must choose." The toxic ancient shoved its irritation down and focused. It was a deadly mistake to lose concentration when speaking to its peers, and Therazin, cunning and wily, didn't make such mistakes. "You seem unusually enthused. Are the prospects really so promising?" "There are 2 in the 5th as we speak," Odrin said. "Why not look and see for yourself?" The 5th. It had been long since Therazin had made its presence felt in that place. Unlike Arcanidum, who obsessed over his subjects, Therazin did not care to dwell on what it achieved in the past. Yet, if it wanted to, it could. The 2 ancients allowed the contact to fray until it finally broke. Others reached out to their newly awakened member, but Therazin rejected their advances. It wanted to think, and to feed. The mighty beast rose up on its legs and scuttled left and right, letting the ichor and mana flow through its body, working out the kinks from centuries of sleep. As it did so, Therazin extended its mind out into the surrounding tunnels. Poison, toxin and venom dripped from the air itself. Every surface was in a constant state of being eaten away and regenerating. Nothing could survive here in the decaying world without being able to weather the most abominable conditions, but now that the master of this place had awoken, the danger would stir to even greater heights. With every step, Thierazin sucked in the poison, drank it in as if it were crystal clear water. The mana tried to ravage its insides, to burn, to break down, to savage and destroy, but it couldn't. Instead, the ancient took from it, drew nourishment and sustenance from the toxin, then returned it, breathing it out twice as potent as it had been before. The walls around it began to sizzle and dissolve into slurry while Thierazin grinned, the circular mouth hidden in the center of its limbs baring its green fangs to the world. It was time to feast. Chapter 1404. Within the fortress. The wave had arrived. Ghazi could feel it. Even here, in his little bubble of natural 5th stratum mana, he could sense the raging torrent of power at the edge of his senses. He grinned savagely to himself, then chomped down on a scone. Apparently, the colony hadn't covered it in the candied blood of their enemies, but instead some sort of jam. He'd been told it was made from strawberries, whatever that was. In any case, it was delicious, and he annihilated the treat between his needle-sharp fangs before spearing the crumbs with his radula. For once in his long life, it was difficult for the old slug to determine how he wanted the future to play out. He'd betrayed his own people, certainly, and if he were caught by them, he would be put to death. This was something he'd rather avoid, of course. However, he didn't like the ants, and he actively hated whoever the puppeteer pulling their strings turned out to be, probably the Legion, despite the farce he'd seen. If the entire invasion was destroyed down to the last insect, he would rejoice in his heart, then hope he could break out of his prison and loot their tea supplies. He pondered this question further as he took his time selecting which scone he would devour next, only to be interrupted by a disturbance by the window panel. The light shifted, the panel became clear and Solent was revealed on the other side, at ease, already enjoying her tea. "Greetings, Ghazi. I see you are well. What do you want?" the Krath demanded, unconsciously moving to protect his precious scones. "You blackmailed me for all I can tell you." Solent clacked her mandibles, expressing her doubts about the accuracy of that statement before taking another sip of tea. "I thought it would be prudent to speak with you again now that the wave has arrived. I have more free time now, after all." "More free time?" the slug scoffed. "Have you already surrendered your life to the 5th? That didn't take long. It's simply that, with the fortress now complete and our defenses established, there is nothing more I can do. We will either hold out, or we won't." "You won't," Ghazi chuckled evilly. "If you thought the 5th was difficult to manage before, you're in for a whole world of pain. Nothing in the dungeon can prepare you for what's coming." "And what is it that's coming, specifically, Ghazi?" Solent asked coolly. "Would you care to elaborate?" "I don't feel the need," he replied, smug. "After all, you've built your fortress, all you need to do is see if you can hold out. What does it matter what I have to say?" "Interesting," Solent mused. "You say you're native. Stratum is so dangerous, so deadly, yet we are here. We have constructed an enormous fortress, defeated the Krath tribes, purified the mana. Where am I, Ghazi? I'm sitting here, drinking tea and eating snacks. Am I in the 4th? The 3rd? Or am I here, in the supposedly deadliest stratum of the dungeon?" The Krath sneered. "You think you can bait information out of me so cheaply? Why would I expose any information I possess when I can watch you come crawling back to me, begging for answers while the walls of your fortress melt before your very eyes? Perhaps then, your masters will finally make themselves known and we can cease this farce. Is it really so surprising that a species of sapient ant would be so successful in taming your home stratum?" Solent asked, genuinely curious. Ghazi's insistence that someone had to be behind the invasion and the colony couldn't be responsible had never bothered her, but it did confuse her. Ghazi didn't bother to reply, merely selecting another scone and tossing it into his maw. He chewed while he eyed the ant general surreptitiously. He didn't trust Solent. Her steely, unflinching attitude and the almost unemotional timbre of her thoughts told him all he needed to know of how cutthroat her decision-making really was. Already, the wily ant had managed to get him to say far more than he'd ever intended. He wouldn't allow her to get any more. He might have betrayed his tribe, but he wasn't about to betray the 5th stratum entirely. Solent watched the Krath in turn. After their many conversations, she felt she was starting to get some level of understanding. Ghazi wasn't a coward, and he was far from stupid. The slug was, above all else, self-interested, beyond even what other Krath were capable of. Food had been one lever to pry knowledge out of him, but it seemed she would need to find others if she wanted to know more. "Very well, Ghazi, how about we make a wager?" she said. How long do you think the fortress will be able to survive the wave? A week, 2 weeks. So, if you beat the Mark 1 set, you will win the wager. How am I supposed to collect in the event that you lose? Presumably, that would mean the entire fortress had been destroyed. We can compromise, Solent stated reasonably. In fact, this could be the only way for you to secure a way out of the fortress in the event we start to lose. Let's say that the moment the outer wall is breached, you win the bet. It will take at the very least a few hours for the entire complex to fall after that. Enough time for you to collect. Ghazi pondered the offer. It was a trap, of course it was. However, in order to win, all he needed was for the wall to be breached. From what he knew, that was a near certainty. All he had to do was make sure the terms of the deal were sufficiently favorable. The moment the outer wall falls, I get safe passage out, he demanded, a clear, unobstructed path to safety. That's fine, Solent agreed. And if I win, you will answer my questions to the best of your ability. The Krat's eyes narrowed as Solent sipped her tea. You know what will happen if you answer unsatisfactorily, Solent told him clearly, tipping an antenna toward her own plate of treats. It would be in your interest to honor our deal. Ghazi glanced down at his own plate of scones, now half depleted. I hear they are wonderful with jam and cream, Solent said. Ghazi snarled. 1405. It's remarkable what they've achieved here, Rathwin said to his colleagues. Not just the scale of the construction, but the speed. To think this has all been done in such a small amount of time is incredible. He and his fellow researchers were sitting in their joint lounge. The colony had put them into a set of adjoining suites, giving each their own sleeping quarters but with shared living space. Considering where they were, the quality of the lodgings was well in excess of what they had expected. The productivity of their society is astonishing, his colleague Mauritius stated. I'd be fascinated to know just how their economy functions. Though, I'm not sure if it could be described that way, since they don't have currency. Please, Horatio groaned, let us not be drawn in by economics. He nearly spat the word out, as if it left a foul taste in his mouth. We are here to advance real academia. The wave has begun, and we are perhaps the first academics to study the fifth stratum under these conditions. It's unprecedented. Don't forget why you are really here, a voice stated coldly from by the wall. The officer of the Golden City, Nemes, stared at the mages with a hard gaze. You are here to assess the capabilities of the colony and determine the likely success of this venture. The Child Emperor has allowed you to come here, so make sure you achieve the goals that were set for you. The academics fell silent, except for Rathwin, who made a soothing gesture. Of course we are aware of our mission, how could we not be? The Child Emperor's wishes are our priority, naturally. However, it was also agreed with the tower that we would be able to conduct our own research. Please forgive our enthusiasm, but don't think for a moment we have forgotten our purpose. Nemes grunted disbelievingly, then returned to watching over the group. It was uncomfortable, having an agent of the crown in the room as they discussed, and it took some time for the conversation to resume its flow. Shortly after, there came a knock at the door. Rathwin rose to answer and found a strange pair of ants waiting outside the door. One radiated cold, the other immense heat. Various features about them told of just how dedicated they were to their respective elements, such as the ice-rimmed antennae on the one, or the literal volcano-shaped carapace rising on the back of the other. Greetings, the ice mage said. My name is Coolant, and this is my sibling, Propellant. We have come to ask if you and your fellow academics might be of some assistance. We have found something in the fifth that you may wish to take a look at. Oh, Rathwin asked. What might that be? It's difficult to explain, Propellant said. You should come and take a look for yourself. It wasn't hard to convince the academics. The prospect of new knowledge was something they found almost irresistible, after all. Despite Nemen's glares and muttered complaints, the group happily bundled off through the tunnels, discussing amongst themselves and conversing with the two elemental ant mages. After an hour, they eventually made their way to a small chamber deep in the heart of the nest. At one end, a relatively small basin had been shaped out of the wall, and it contained some form of glowing liquid. What we want you to see is inside the basin, Coolant urged them. Rathwin nodded and led the way forward. The basin was around waist height for him, and he bent down to peer into the liquid, seeing naught but some fist-sized spheres resting within. Each of them was a light blue color, though that could just be the water, and if he wasn't mistaken, there was some movement inside them. What are we looking at? He asked. Krath eggs, Propellant replied. Holy Jiminis of the Child Emperor! Rathwin cried, jumping back. What is it? Mauritius asked. hesitating to approach the basin herself. They said they captured crath eggs. That's impossible. To clarify, Coolant broke into Rathwin's thoughts, these used to be crath eggs. We found them during the expansion, but they were changed somewhat when we brought them within the cleansed mana. Honestly, we didn't expect them to survive, but they have. These aren't all we found, but they are the closest batch to, it's starting. What is starting? Rathwin asked, mind spinning at the implications of what he'd heard. Crath eggs. Actual crath eggs. Cleansed somehow. So what was growing inside them, then? Then his thoughts clicked. They're about to hatch. He cried, and his companions leapt back in horror, worried a crath was about to leap out of the basin and devour them. It's quite safe, Coolant assured them. Look closely. I hope you might be able to explain what you see. His companions hesitated, so Rathwin swallowed, steeled his nerve, and walked closer to the basin, once again bending down to look more closely. There was movement, more and more, the eggs were vibrating slightly, rocking and back and forth as something inside tried to get out. His mind was filled with terrifying visions of vicious slugs leaping out of the pool and latching onto his face, but he firmed his resolve. If his host said it was safe, then it must be. With a sudden pop pop pop, several of the eggs fell open at once, releasing shards and clouding the water, making it difficult to see. Rathwin rose, still looking down as he waited, filled with trepidation, for something to emerge. Soon, something did. It was a snail, complete with a tiny, glittering shell. Its color was soft, an almost pinkish blue, and its tiny eyes shone like jewels on the tips of its stalks, while two long mustaches drooped down from either side of its face. The newborn snail peered up at them curiously, but remained silent. The academics, as one, fell flat on their backsides. Th. Rathwin wheezed. These are the same as the others, Coolant observed. We've built a creche of sorts for them, but we don't know what they are. That's a chow, the mage uttered, filled with stunned disbelief. Chapter 1406, Snail Nursery. The chow are a lost people, and knowledge of their society, their manner of speech, even their appearance, is long abandoned knowledge. There is little use in clinging to the past on Pangara. Despite what the affluent people living in bejeweled cities within the fourth stratum may think, they are locked into an endless struggle to survive along with everyone else. There is never peace between the dungeon and the sapient races, and the fall of the chow is just one example of the dreadful cost of failure. Tucked away in various places, it's possible to find experts on the chow, those who have dedicated their lives to preserving what little remains of their once mighty empire. If you were to ask them, they would describe the chow as wise, patient, peaceful and shockingly powerful. They were the first to raise a mighty empire in the fourth stratum, and then risked it all in a virtuous mission to rid the world of the blight that infested the fifth. Obviously, they failed. Excerpt from Lost Peoples of the Dungeon, by Lalo. A chow, Coolant wondered. I must confess, I don't know all that much about them. Is this some sort of monster? Rathwin found himself barely able to speak. What he saw in front of his eyes simply couldn't be. It was impossible, and yet, the snail was there, placid, calm, looking at them with a level of patience that seemed almost surreal for a creature who had only just been born. Well, I can see you need a moment to collect yourselves, Coolant observed, noting that one of the academics appeared to have passed out. We'll gather these little ones and take them to the sanctuary we prepared. You can come along if you like. Another ant entered the chamber with a large, round dish gripped in its mandibles. Coolant and Propellant approached the basin from which more and more snails were emerging and for some reason, bowed. The snails turned their eyes toward the pair, then, without exception, bowed back. I don't know why, but they seem to like this gesture, Coolant explained before using her antennae to prompt the baby snails onto the dish. Rathwin watched the whole thing occur in a blank state, still unable to process. The implications were impossibly out of reach, no matter how many times he reached for them. He turned, recalling that Professor Engelbert was well read on the subject of the chow, only to find him foaming at the mouth and vibrating as he stared blindly into space. With some difficulty, the mages of the tower supported each other to walk behind the dish as they moved through several chambers similar to the one they just exited. All the while, the little snails remained calm, looking at everything happening around them with a sense of reserved curiosity. If you know something about these little guys, it'll be helpful for us, Propellant said. We don't know enough to be able to teach them anything of their own history or culture. I hope you'll be willing to share. Oh, of course, Rathwin managed, collecting a little of his usual aplomb. I apologize for my lack of clarity. We're all just rather surprised. Putting it mildly. Finally they came into the room that the ants must have created to house the newly born snails. Considering it could only have been built over the last few days, they'd been remarkably thorough. It was larger than Rathwin had expected, 20 meters square, and filled with all sorts of things that the colony seemed to have assumed young mollusks would want. Pools of shallow water, leafy green and vibrant plants, along with surfaces of various textures that rose and fell, allowing the young chow to slide and climb all over the place if they so decided. The dish was placed down and the latest group of chow were introduced to the room, sliding off onto the floor. Curiously, whenever they met another snail who they hadn't seen before, they bowed their little heads, a respectful gesture that seemed to be instinctual for them. A dozen ants of a variety that Rathwin had never seen before moved through the room, carefully placing their legs as they interacted with the newborn children, cleaning them, urging them toward the food or picking pieces of detritus off the ground. Brood tenders, Coolant answered his unspoken question. Normally, you won't ever see them outside one of the ant academies or a brood chamber, but we felt their expertise would be needed to properly care for the little ones. Some were brought here on short notice. Thankfully, the snails seem amenable to being cared for by ants. And what do you intend to do with these chow? Nemes, or Kathy, to use her cover name, asked pointedly. What reason do you have to care for them? Coolant and Propellant looked confused by the question, turning a little toward each other and waggling their antennae in a confused manner. Well, we have no plans at all. How could we? We had no idea what would come out of the eggs until a few days ago. It was by chance that we came across them in the first place. Since they have been born here in the fortress and in our care, we intend to look after and raise them as best we can. Why would we do any less? I think my associate is only concerned that the young chow are being cared for. Since you clearly have every intention of looking after them, that's well, Rathwin broke in, staring hard at Kathy. Did she really think the colony was planning on raising some mighty army of chow? There were a few dozen of the snails in this chamber, and they were barely hatched. To rebuild the chow empire to any sort of strength would be the work of hundreds of years. Let us leave the young to their rest, Rathwin suggested, and we can go somewhere else and tell you all that we know of the chow. That'd be great, Propellant said. 1407. Engelbert, you're our best expert on the chow, can you pull yourself together, man? I think, no. Rathwin shot a quick smile toward Coolant and Propellant, then briefly wondered if the ants were even able to read human facial expressions. They didn't have muscles on the outside of their heads, but then, they did spend a lot of time around people who did, so, maybe. I'm sorry, I'm afraid the shock hasn't quite worn off yet. I'm not sure you realize what a momentous event the resurfacing of the chow will prove to be. He couldn't help but Kathy, as he said this. In their time, the chow were among the most dominant powers on all of Pangara. Perhaps not as mighty as the Abyssal Legion in the early, post-cataclysm times, but their empire flourished like no other as the race to settle the dungeon began. She was already suspicious the ants would use the snails to become a strategic threat, as if the Silver City had anything to fear. You're all being strange, Propellant said directly. As far as we're concerned, these are just baby snails that need looking after. The most interesting aspect to all this that I can see, is that it's possible to purify the craft. Indeed, Coolant agreed, my more hot-headed sibling has put forward our position accurately. The craft, as it turns out, may be a product of their own corruption process. We know for a fact that directly exposing them to cleansed mana will kill them, but there may be a way to revert them back to what they were before. I doubt they would even want that, Rathwin said after some consideration. The Krath revel in what they are, there's a sick, twisted pride amongst the tribes in their way of life and what they do to others. The two ants considered each other, waving their antennae back and forth, before they seemed to shrug. It's only a thought. Now, tell us what you know of these snails. We'll pass that information on to the brood tenders, and they can devise a proper curriculum for the hatchlings. They were seated around a table, the academics recovering and muttering amongst themselves while sipping hot tea and nibbling biscuits, leaving Rathwin to occupy the two ant mages. The insects were no longer willing to be denied, however, so he hoped they would have something valuable to share. Engelbert, you better have something. Rathwin warned. They want to start designing curricula already. They were just born, Engelbert exclaimed. How are they supposed to start learning already? It wasn't a bad point. Why wouldn't they? Coolant replied after he'd queried them. She sounded genuinely confused. My siblings start the learning process the moment they are born. Even before then, technically. I understand we are monsters, so there is a difference, but we will not fail in our duty to these hatchlings. We will do everything we can, starting now. There wasn't much to say to that. Engelbert and the others discussed amongst themselves for a few minutes, debating and collating what information they had, before the bald Maggio scholar acted as their spokesperson. The Chow were known for a few things that can still be found in the historical record, he said. Chief among these is their mental prowess. As you've seen from the young, the Chow don't have any arms, and we don't believe they will grow any either. I wish we had a proper expert here to explain this better, but there are writings that describe the Chow as able to move the world with merely their thoughts and songs. Thoughts and songs? So they were powerful mages and singers? Not quite, Engelbert said, starting to sweat. Anyone can move things using force magic, but what the Chow did seems to have been considered something different entirely. Without even calling upon mana, they could use their minds to manipulate the world. That's weird, Propellant snipped her mandibles thoughtfully. No mana, how does that even work? What about the singing? Coolant said, turning to the others. It's been days since the first of the snails was born, but we haven't heard a peep out of them at all. We thought they might be mute. Again, I wish I had more I could tell you, Engelbert said, but the records clearly state there was immense power to be found in the songs of the Chow. I don't know how, or what form it took, but they were able to create miracles through their songs. Many of the mighty works of the Chow were said to have been created via song. This may pose an issue, Coolant muttered. We don't even have vocal cords. How are we supposed to teach someone how to sing? Not to mention this mind power that we don't know anything about, Propellant agreed. This might be more difficult than we thought. Other than this, Engelbert continued, we know the Chow were very communally oriented. The ruins of their cities contained many gathering places and open spaces for them to gather. I think keeping them together is a good first step. With time and access to our resources in the tower, we should have a great deal more we can say. Sadly, none of us are experts in this field. That's fine, thank you, Coolant said. You've given us much to think on already. Rathwin made their goodbyes and shepherded the academics back to their quarters, which immediately erupted into furious discussion with Nemes breathing down their necks demanding to know the military import of baby Chow. Raoes. All he could do was try to manage expectations as he wondered just what on Pengara these ants were going to show him next. 1408. I knew it was going to get bad, but sheesh, things are getting ridiculous out here. The platform has been under constant assault since the wave broke, which is fine, that much was expected. What I didn't expect was just how disgusting the fifth was going to get. The tunnel leading toward the platform I'm defending has turned into a kilometer-wide river of sludge and mucus. The walls are literally dripping with snot and slime that seeps together into a slow-moving torrent of goop. Since the platform and the rest of the fortress is disconnected from the tunnel by an empty gap, all of it just flows down and falls into the absurdly deep gap that runs the entire height of the fortress. There must be an absolute ocean of the stuff forming down there. I hope the colony constructed some sort of emergency overflow valve down there or something. I'm worried that if things keep going, it'll pile up until this platform is underwater. Now, I'm not affected by the mucus directly. It isn't flying up and slapping me in the face, at least not yet. Does it contribute to the absurdly toxic atmosphere in here? Sure, but I don't have to fight it. However, this disgusting, noxious river of sludge seems to drive the monsters spawning around here into an absolute frenzy. It's teeming with creepy slugs, crabs, weird sucker fish things and plenty other things besides, all of them leaping out of the goop at the platform spewing out filth and trying to bite me. It's just so icky. Naturally, I don't get much chance to rest, but thankfully, I don't need one. I never venture out into the toxic mana anymore, remaining on the platform with the rest of the colony and militia, using my abilities as best I can to help stem the tide. Chomp. Attack on the left. Watch out. Chomp. Swarm incoming. Be careful of the parasites. Gravity bomb. HOOOWWWWWWWWWLLLLL. I hate the parasites. Eldest. Cho-wo. That's not for chomping. Bertrand. What the heck are you sneaking up on me for? There's a battle going on. I concentrate, gather up the mana and fire off another gravity bomb. There isn't much energy in it, but I empower it to provide the kick it needs to be effective. Considering just how dense the sludge and slime is out there, even gravity bombs aren't super effective. They consume literal tons of slime over a few seconds and peter out. To create one large enough to do serious damage, I'd be risking the integrity of the platform itself. At least I can still lob them at dense packs of monsters before they get too close. With a few seconds of breathing room, I turn my attention back to the Templar. Is everything alright? Is there a problem? Have we run out of salt? Bertrand's salt bombs have been way more effective than I thought they would be. The man has a remarkable talent for making the most out of not much. He even designed the salt lobbers we've started using. The carvers were miffed about the inelegance of the design, but couldn't argue with its effectiveness. Row yes. No, nothing of the sort, the older man replied, ducking his head in an awkward sort of half-bow half-nod thing that I've asked him not to do several times already. The general wanted to speak to you and, the other Templar were hoping you'd have a break. It isn't hard for me to sense the other Templar, and when I focus in that direction, I see the other 5 sitting down, looking intently in this direction. The kids too, cowards. They sent Bertrand to try and get me to rest because they didn't have the guts. Bah, wait a second, is the general also going to ask me to take a break? I demand. Maybe. Bertrand hedges, but I can tell he's just trying to avoid saying yes. He, along with the other new Templar, have learned how to use pheromonal language as part of their class, which seems busted to me. I have to evolve and grow new organs to do stuff like that. You just get it when you level up. I get basically nothing when I level up. Then again, they can't evolve, which kind of sucks. The constant fighting has spurred on their growth, and most of them are close to advancing their base Templar class into something fancier. What that will turn out to be, none of us have any idea. Look, I've explained this a dozen times already, I don't need to rest. I'm specifically built not to need it, and I'm needed here. Just because I've been fighting for 5 days straight, that's nothing. This is going to go on for weeks. I know that, Anthony, I know it. Bertrand says, holding up his hands in a soothing gesture, but the kids are getting quite insistent on it. I think they're worried about you. Wait, the kids. I look over at them again, and quickly double take. They don't look so much worried as they do super annoyed. Why are they glaring at me like that? As I watch, a shadow seems to rise up behind them. The light blends with the darkness, revealing just enough of the ant concealed within that they consign a message to me. Don't make us do it. My rage is instantly ignited. Come, get some. I gesture back furiously. You think you can put me to sleep? Tuck me in and read me a night-night story. I'm the one who insisted on the sleep schedule in the first place. Then it was Chrysalis who went and got a few enthusiastic ants and proceeded to take things way too far. Wait, why are the kids marching towards me? Wait, did they not realize I was gesturing to the nameless one behind them? Did they think that message was for them? They look so determined as well. Amelia is practically cracking her knuckles. Am I really going to have to fight them? Fine, I yell, exasperated. Fine, you win. I'll take a nap. Sheesh, you people are impossible. I turn around and fire off one last gravity bomb, then watch with satisfaction as it consumes the filth before winking out of existence. Amelia, Trine and Allison are still looking at me distrustfully, and I can't help but rough up their hair with the tip of an antenna. I'm going, alright, I'm going, I tell them. I'll meet with the general first, then I'll go to sleep. You win. They appear satisfied, but still insist on walking with me to go see the general. I'm halfway to the resting chamber inside the fortress before I realize that the nameless one may have cunningly set me up. Damn it. 1409. The inside of the fortress has become an interesting place since the wave started. After I take my requisite 8 hours of rest, satisfying my own standards and getting the 3 human children off my case, I decide to poke about the inside for a few minutes, just to see what's going on. To be specific, I want to see what was going on particularly in the upper and outer layers. The tunnels are packed full of ants and militia, running to reinforce one of the platforms, or on their way back from one. It's weird the way we defend this fortress. There's no manning the walls or any such thing down here, all we have to do is defend the platforms. Mana is flooding in through the channels now as more and more woofer stations come online, stuffing the fortress full of cleansed mana and keeping us safe from the toxic nightmare outside. However, it's exactly that cleansed environment that I'm curious about. Although the mana veins that normally distribute energy have been peeled and folded away inside the walls of the fortress, that doesn't mean spawn points can't form. In fact, the cleansed mana is so dense now, and continuing to thicken, that I'm convinced it has started to create a whole new type of monster. When I appear in the upper levels, the last place I saw the little critters running around, I happen to bump into exactly the ant I was hoping to see, Bella. I mean, Ellie would have also been fine. Bella, how is one of my two favorite course shapers going today? I greet her cheerfully. The normally chipper aunt waggles her antenna disapprovingly. You shouldn't play favorites, eldest. The queens never do, and neither should you. I'm not a queen, I defend myself. You're my siblings, not my children. Even so, she replies, a little snippily, you're the eldest. Alright, fine, I suppose you have a point. I reach out and prod her with an antenna. So, what's got you so frazzled? Bella sighs heavily. It's the monsters that are spawning up here. Ellie and I have been trying to study them, now that we have some spare time from woofer management, but it's proving to be a bit of a pain. How so? Can't you just fight some, grab a core and get all the information you want? Normally, yes, she says, frustrated, but for some reason, it isn't quite working out like it normally would. We're getting more and more monsters spawning at various points around the fortress, but mostly up here, for some reason, so you'd think there would be enough for them to fight each other, get levels and get cores, but they aren't. Aren't getting cores. Aren't fighting each other. Not that much, at least. I'm confused. Are you saying the dungeon has actually produced monsters that don't really fight? That seems unnatural. All monsters fight, even the sapient ones. I've never seen the dungeon produce something that had an instinctive belief in peace. What the heck is going on here? It's not that they don't fight at all, not exactly. It's probably easier to show you. She directs me to follow her, and we trot off through a broad tunnel. I don't have long, mind you, Bella, I have to be back on the platform soon. It's not far. I've been trying to set up a rudimentary farm for the creatures, allowing the cleansed mana to pool within. Seeing it for yourself will be better than me explaining it. Fair enough. As she said, we don't have far to go before we arrive at a side tunnel that Bella asked the carvers to excavate. Within is a relatively small farm, as these things go, dug out into a pit so that we can observe from above. I barely fit through the entrance, but that's okay, I can just get my head far enough inside to see the goings-on within. Raobs. As you can see, eldest, the monsters are strangely cooperative. She isn't wrong. Within the pit, I can see little packs of reddish globs, almost like slimes, just sort of, wibbling about together. Pale crab-looking things stalk among them, seemingly content to leave the others be. It's almost unnerving to watch them being so cooperative. What the heck is going on down there? Wait, I think we have an enemy spawn over there, Bella pointed out. An enemy, I say. The other monsters down there don't fight among themselves much, but they will jump on certain types. Watch. The mana is coalescing in specific little pits, and out of one crawls an ugly, imp-looking thing, covered in fat, finger-like tendrils that wave in the air. The moment it emerges, it tries to sneak toward the other monsters, but the crabs are having none of it. With a savagery that belies their previous chilled-outedness, they go absolutely feral, throwing themselves at the newcomer with a wild and selfless abandon that would bring a tear to Leroy's eye. In short order, the new arrival is no more, and the crabs waste no time consuming the biomass before getting back to their own group and resuming the relaxed atmosphere from before. I watch the whole thing, quite stumped. Maybe the monsters here are especially tribal. I say, some types work together against others. The real question is, are these the monsters that spawned in the 5th before it was corrupted, or are they something entirely new? The academics might know something, but I kind of doubt it. Records of the 5th before it was gooped would probably only be found in the Legion. I'll keep studying them, eldest, but as you can see, it'll take a long time before we get enough cores to start learning something. They just aren't amassing experience all that fast. Keep it, and let me know when you have something to share. I'm curious. I will. 1410. Leroy had never felt stronger. Power coursed through her immense frame. Her musculature thrummed with energy, her mandibles gleamed with indescribable sharpness. Her carapace had not been improved at all. Why would she bother spending her precious evolutionary energy on it, anyway? The colony insisted on decking her out with increasingly more powerful armor, after all. Indeed, once Smith Ant had discovered her newly evolved form, Leroy had been forced to sit and wait while she was measured, weighed, and a new suit of armor was painstakingly constructed, enchanted and fitted. All the while, the smith had muttered and mumbled in Leroy's ear, warning her not to do something stupid. Of course she wasn't going to do something stupid. She was going to do the smartest and best thing it was possible for an ant to do. Sacrifice herself for the glory of the colony. And now, in her powerful, Tier 7 form, fully armored and with her sisters by her side, she felt she could achieve an end truly worthy of the colony's investment in her. Forward, sisters, she bellowed. We seek. Destroy the filth that attempts to defile our platform. Raise the reliquary high. Advance. There was no glorious charge, no headlong assault into the breach, for that would be assured destruction, which was apparently not allowed. Instead, the immortals marched out in their armored glory onto the platform and pushed themselves to the front lines. The colony was fighting a fully defensive war, which made heavy assault troops of limited use, but while the eldest was asleep, the immortals would place themselves between their siblings and the danger that loomed all around. Indeed, they would put their bodies on the line to the point they were no longer able, finally freed from their burdens. Leroy could feel her spirit fortified by the blessed presence of the reliquary, and she gladly pushed herself in front, right in the heart of the monster assault. What confronted her was a wall of mucus, sludge and vomit. It looked like heaven. Get behind me, she declared before throwing herself in front of a wave of slime being spewed forth by a worm slug 5 meters wide. Despite being as resistant to acid and toxin as the colony could make it, her armor still steamed under the onslaught, and some leaked through to burn into her carapace. Leroy embraced the pain, welcomed it. The first tick of HP she lost sent a thrill running down her antennae. She was going to do it. Today was the day. Snapping her mandibles viciously, she gripped the worm and heaved, pulling it back into the cleansed mana before using her body to pin it down. The wretched creature writhed like an eel, but she held it firm, even while it disgorged acidic slime that sizzled and burned. When the monster had finally burned away, she turned to seek the next challenge, a fire burning in her heart. In her heart, but crucially not in her phoenix flame organ. Normally, whenever she suffered, whenever she took damage, the cursed organ was there, filling up, gaining power, just waiting for her to finally collapse so it could release the pent-up energy and bring her back from the brink. No, it had been completely replaced within her body. She was freed from that abysmal, cursed organ. Now she was a fallen zombie soldier. No longer inflicted with the dreadful phoenix flame organ, but blessed with the eternal zombie fungus, whatever that was. It didn't matter to her. A massive turtle monster reared up from the river of slime, mouth agape with 6 leech-like tongues spitting parasites everywhere. "I'll get it," cried every member of the immortals in range. With her advantage in size and strength, it was Leroy who got there first. She shouldered her siblings aside before leaping at the monster, trying to ram her face into its gaping maw. What better way to stop the parasite assault? Ranubs. Of course, that meant the wriggling worms tried to force their way into her head, but they were sadly rebuffed by her armor. Too weak, she cursed. Her head was too large to fit into the creature's maw properly, so she withdrew and started chomping furiously at the beast. More immortals joined the fray, throwing themselves bodily in harm's way in order to drag the monster into the cleansed mana, where they could pin it down as it was purged. As soon as it stopped moving, Leroy leapt to her feet. "The search goes on, sisters," she cried. "We seek." For hour after glorious hour, it continued. Leroy threw herself at every enemy, no matter how wretched or foul. She shielded her siblings by putting her body in harm's way time and time again, letting her armor and carapace be the bulwark between her sisters and harm. They forced healing on her, of course, which she begrudgingly endured, but even that wasn't enough. Her muscles ached and tore. Her armor was melted, dented and rent. Her helmet was split, her carapace was gouged and scratched. Her HP was falling lower and lower. Many of her fellow immortals had already been consumed by the cleansing fire. Dragged clear by the rest of the ants, they had arisen, fully rid of the toxic influence of the fifth and healed of all their injuries. Re-armored, they were made to return to the fight fully fit and healthy, a dreadful state of affairs. Leroy's heart wept for them, even as she rejoiced for herself. It wouldn't be long now. She was right on the edge. Soon, the healers would demand she retreat for healing, but not quite yet. They didn't know she could no longer revive, and so they would allow her to stay in the fight, even as she grew weaker and weaker. This was her chance. All she needed was the right fight. Ellipsis. A shattering roar split the air as a massive monster breached the surface of the slime river. Formed of slug-like flesh, it reared up and opened its maw wide, virulent slime dripping from every inch of its body. Row after row of serrated, needle-sharp fangs bristled within, along with a burst of dense, toxic gas. The creature lumbered forward, propelled on 2 tree-thick stumps it used for arms and its long tail. Leroy wept.